Hello and welcome to Custom Gamer. My name is Daz and this is the show where we talk about level design while playing cool maps. Today we're playing a Quake map by Diggs called Dig07 RJ Zone. And it's a pretty interesting map. It's kind of split the community right down the middle about what they think about it. It's quite confusing on the first playthrough, at least the original version was. There's been a re-release with a lot of bug fixes and progression helpers and things like that. And some improved lighting, because the original was very, very dark. I had a lot of problems with it, just due to the darkness alone, but that has all been fixed. This new version is actually a joy to play, I'm happy to report. It's really interesting to see a mapper take a completely different take on what Quake gameplay can be, and while it's not perfect, it's actually very, very enjoyable. And I recommend everyone plays the map first before watching this video. I know when people say that on the internet, no one listens, and they watch the video anyway, so I'm giving you plenty of opportunity here to pause the video or close the window, go and download the map and play it, because it's one of those maps where if you watch someone else play it first, you're going to lose some of the magic, because it really is an interesting level which you should play through first, or at least attempt it. And just a quick note, this level does require an engine which has increased limits, so if you're using any kind of modern Quake engine, Quake, Quake Spasm, anything like that, you'll be just fine with this release, but it will not work with older engines. You'll get a lot of grey flash and other horrid errors. So with that said, let's get to it. Okay, so if you hadn't guessed by the name of the map title, this is a map about rocket jumping in its various different forms. The map has some interesting visual language. As you can see here, all these items respawn, and this is denoted by the air bubbles rising out of the item chambers. It's a really nice piece of visual language. It shows the player that there's something not quite right about these things and that they do respawn. And of course the on-screen text helps as well. But it's always nice to have a visual marker for these things. And because armor and health is in such plentiful supply in this map, it has some really interesting ramifications on the balance of things. You can throw the player straight into the deep end, you don't really need to build up, because you're giving the player unlimited armor and health. All they have to do is survive the encounters and then they can go back and stock back up to 100% again. It's pretty interesting. I think it could have been expanded more in this level. Saying that though, I did have to record this demo on normal because hard mode did kick my ass, so but maybe it's perfectly tuned. So the level starts off fairly simple. You're given a rocket launcher straight away and some armor, and you're given some on-screen text as well which says, you know, progression is about rocket jumps. So if you're not happy rocket jumping, then this probably isn't the level for you, as it's required to progress even past this first area here, as you can see. You're always opening up routes to get back easily to where you've already been, so you've noticed here we activated the lift at the top, and now we can use that lift to go up and down without rocket jumping. This is another common theme throughout the entire level. You're always opening up doors, lifts and platforms, so you can move around the level faster, but you always have to do it the hard way first. The level's constantly teasing you by showing you like barred off areas with doors that you can't open. And it's always a question of, okay, how do I get behind that? How do I open this? How do I open that? It's very, very fun. It reminds me in a way of Metroidvania type titles, where progression through the environments is usually denoted by what kind of special items you've picked up, and the level's always teasing you with things off in the distance that you can't activate yet because you don't have the special item or equipment for it, but it's always there and you can kind of go back through the level and get to all these new areas once you pick up a new piece of equipment. You know, games like Darksiders, Dark Souls to an extent, and of course the Metroid and Castlevania games all do this really, really well. And that's the kind of vibe I get from this map as well, because you're always seeing things off in the distance that you can't reach yet. So this kind of slime pit area, it's almost optional, at least the lower part is. The There's a section which I'm going to drop down into in a moment, and you don't really ever need to go there. It's just kind of, if you fall down, the author needed a way to let the player get back up again, and they decided to create this huge kind of area for that to happen. You can see through the gate here, you can see a rune. You need to pick up 3 of these runes to open the end gate, which you can see down here actually, it's right there. And these runes again are always teased in the environment. You can never just grab them, they're always behind something that you have to lower or activate. This is the area that I had a lot of trouble in the original version of the map, because it was so dark down here. You couldn't actually see the way to get out of here at all. It was bathed in complete blackness. And this is where I rage quit the level actually in the first version. I'm walking around here for about 10 minutes trying to find a way out and just gave up. It's unfortunate really, because as it's the only way out of this area, you really need to make it more clear. I mean, if it was a secret or an area which was non-critical, then it wouldn't have been a problem, but because it's literally the only way out of this area, which all players will have to find if they want to exit this area, and it's kind of an issue if it's bathed in complete blackness with nothing in the environment kind of suggesting there's an opening there. Luckily in this version, Diggs did brighten up the whole area quite a bit with lighting, and added a couple of red arrows pointing to it as well, so it's much better here. You can see it on the wall just behind me here. In a moment when I go back there. Yeah, so this was completely pitch black before, unfortunately. There's some really nice detailing in the map as well. Things like little kind of Quakey LCD panels on the walls like you're seeing here. There's a couple of rooms later on where they actually have like little ribbon cables coming out of them going into various kind of devices and mechanical boxes all over the place. It looks amazing. There's some really nice attention to detail, but it's really inconsistent. Like this area here with the slime is super simple. Like all the walls are completely flat. There's no really texture detail or visual interest at all. And then you walk into rooms like this which just look fantastic. It's bizarre. We can have a look up here now. I noticed this small alcove up there on the roof, and that's got to be a secret, right? We'll check it later on. You may be disappointed. So here's the first rune. And you've got these interesting colour-coded teleporters. I think this was an attempt by the author to kind of really help navigation, because it can get a little maze-like. By the end of the level, once you've opened up a lot of doors and areas, it does become a bit mazy, and I think the colour-coded teleporters are there to kind of help that, but it doesn't really work, I think. At least not for me. I mean, maybe others found it helpful, but for me, I could never really remember where the different teleporters were. I think it would have been more helpful if there perhaps been some kind of signage saying where they went, and if the actual level itself had more of a distinctive personality for different areas. It would have been really nice to perhaps have the slime zone have kind of pumps moving around, the kind of signage saying like pumping station and all that kind of stuff. Just a little bit of lore-y stuff like that really helps players kind of cement where they are on the level. And then if you have signage pertaining to that, especially like above teleporters, I think that would have really helped kind of players remember where these different locations are in the map. There's some more nice little details all over the place here. Some of it is really fantastic looking, I love it. So again here we've got some more environmental puzzling. Pretty simple this time, just obviously biosuits help with slime. There's some issues with it though. There's an area later on where you have to actually go up a slime pipe to grab a rune, and it's not particularly clear that you can actually enter into the slime pipe and travel up. I think it's a problem with the actual design of the pipe itself. It looks like slime is coming out of it, and that you shouldn't be able to go up. I think if the room had been designed slightly differently to actually show the pipe, perhaps have little slits in it going all the way up which shows the slime rising, that could have really helped here. just little things like that. The execution is never quite right with some of these puzzles, and it really, really hurts the map in general. Here's what I'm talking about, some more of these LCDs. All the cool little wires coming out of it. Generally, little minuscule details like that generally tend to not work that well in Quake, but you can pull it off. It looks really, really great here. Now we've opened up another shortcut back to that room. You never know when you might need it. Now I think this is probably one of my favourite areas of the entire map. It's one of the legitimately excellently designed rooms. So the use of scrags here is really cool because it draws the player's eye upwards. If you don't kill them all in the doorway, of course. Which lets you notice the rest of them. Even the design of the room itself brings your eyes upwards. It's cylindrical in nature. You can't see the roof from kind of horizontal eye height. And you've got this big pool of water in the centre, which is actually for dropping down into once you've completed the puzzle. But the interesting bit of gameplay here is that you have to do a series of rocket jumps, 5 or 6 even, while under the influence of the pentagram. Now this is actually an impossible puzzle if you don't have the pen, so it really is like a time-limited puzzle. And Diggs throws some amusing obstacles in your direction. So it really is like a race against the clock here. Can you do a series of precision rocket jumps in the 30 seconds allotted? And turns out, yeah, you pretty much just about can. I'm by no means an amazing rocket jumper, so others can probably do it a lot easier than that. And then you can drop down into the pool of water to avoid falling damage. This is actually really, really important, because if you do kind of screw up the time limit element, you could actually have a really low amount of health at the top of that room. And if you have, say, 5 health, then you're going to die from the fall. So yeah, the water there is actually very, very important. Diggs also has a really nice kind of anti-scum system here as well, because a respawning pentagram could be kind of overpowered, right? So when you pick it up, the doors lock on each side of the room to stop players abusing that, which I like a lot. We've opened the door back into this rune room which we were in before, so let's check out this secret. No! Bit of a missed opportunity there, but hey, never mind. We can live with it. And then I noticed something odd on the ceiling here. There's some interesting details, including a blue kind of bolt there, which I shot, and made something appear on the ceiling. I still haven't worked out what this puzzle is. I'm guessing there's kind of different blocks all over the map which you can shoot to perhaps connect the 2 lines on the ceiling there to open a secret or something. That's my guess. I haven't actually been able to find any more of those little blocks to shoot, so I don't know what's going on there. This spawn trap here is pretty nasty. It actually killed me the first time. My very first time through the level, it killed me. I was very, very salty about that. There's a couple of areas like this which you can just kind of take stuff out at super long range before they even aggro. It's obviously a little bit dependent on RNG here, because you could catch the fiend walking towards you, in which case it would see you instantly. That's one of the interesting things that I do like about getting monsters to walk on paths, is that depending on which route you go through the level, you're never really quite sure which way they're going to be facing when you come to that area, so it adds a little bit of a random element. I say random, not really random, it just depends what time you get there. You know, speedrunners will actually time what time they enter a certain area so that monsters are in certain positions. I think that's kind of a cool element which you can use in maps. It's not really used here, it's just kind of thrown in for ambience, I guess, but interesting thought nonetheless. So this corridor here brings us into a room with 4 doors, and the doors are separated into 2 sets of 2, with 1 button operating each set of 2 doors. Now the trick with this puzzle is that you have to hit both buttons in order to reach the teleporter. And it's kind of a timed puzzle, and you can only do it once you come round this way first to open up the first set of doors. It's kind of an interesting, interconnected area, which you have to explore from both sides before you can solve the puzzle. It's almost like a figure of 8 shape even, with kind of buttons at each side that you have to hit. Kind of interesting because if you just come at it from one side, then you can still kind of enter half of the loop and pick up some supplies and walk through some teleporters, etc, etc. But you have to explore both sides and kind of connect the loop in order to really progress. So you can see here, you have to go around the other side, press the button to open that gate in the middle, and then go around the other side to open up these two doors here in order to get to the teleporter. I hope I haven't just exploded everyone's brain trying to explain this. It still confuses me sometimes. So that slime funnel in the previous room was what I was talking about earlier, where it doesn't really look like you should be able to climb up it. I think if the room was designed differently, like I was talking about earlier, it would have really helped here. This is another nice feature of the level, is that once you've opened up a couple of routes, you have lots of different shortcuts to get to respawning items, which really helps. For example here, where you have to go and grab a biosuit and get back into the slime funnel before it runs out. It is possible to do this without a biosuit, but you take a lot of damage. A lot of damage. So I don't recommend that. This gives us access to the second rune, and now there is just one left, which, you guessed it, requires a rocket jump. Got some handy direction markers up on the ceiling there. And this jump can be a bit tricky, especially with like always run on, because you tend to just kind of wobble back and forwards on the pipe afterwards, trying to kind of stabilize yourself. It's an interesting place for some regenerating health. I wonder if players would rocket jump up here with only 5 health and then die from the full damage down here, because this drop here is actually a critical route that you have to go down. It's not very well telegraphed for the player at all. It looks like it could be another secret area or something. I feel like that should have been like a bigger tunnel with like some more interesting geometry around it to kind of really signify this is definitely a route you should check out. Because I looked down here the first time I got here and I didn't drop down. I just figured it was, you know, a piece of level that I'd been to before. When actually it's not. You kind of need to go this way. So this whole kind of area that we're in now, the kind of third act, I guess, of the map, is pretty interesting. It gives you a red armor here, and it gives you a quad damage somewhere else in the level, which you'll spot in a moment. And you're asked to do a quad damage rocket jump into a opening in order to proceed. And this is the only part of the level which I really didn't like, because I felt like the design of all the different areas didn't really combine well enough to show the player what to do. And indeed, a lot of people seem to agree with that. It seems to be an area which a lot of people got stuck on here. They weren't sure what to do. And even in this fixed version of the level, Diggs gives a lot of hints, including text hints, that you have to use a quad rocket jump, which kind of gives away the whole game, which is why I don't like that solution. I think it could be solved a lot more elegantly with just some better level design in this area. For example, we haven't even got to the room we have to perform the jump in yet, so I'm just going to preempt it a little bit here, but the hole you have to jump into is really not interesting at all. It is literally a cube cut into the ceiling, right? There's kind of no visual interest around it. I think the whole room should have been designed in the same way as kind of the pentagram room was, where it really draws your eye upwards into the ceiling, and you really notice the kind of the room towering above you with all these platforms and everything. And the room really speaks to its purpose. Like, you see the pent, you see all the platforms up there, and you just know what you have to do. It's just absolutely natural. That's why I love that room so much. Whereas the quad rocket jump is kind of the exact opposite of that. There's this kind of obscure hole in the ceiling that you don't even notice. And yeah. Diggs does add some visuals pointing upwards in the room, which I like a lot. It gets you to look up and notice the hole. But I really dislike the text. I think that if the room that required you to do the quad rocket jump actually had windows in it where you could see the red armor and see the quad damage but not reach them from that room, so there's a little bit of puzzling to kind of work out, okay, how do I get these two items that I need to survive this rocket jump? I think if you could see all the elements in the room and then just work out how to get them all and get back to the rocket jump, that would have been a really, really nice way to solve the issue, I think, along with the actual room drawing the player's eyes upwards. So here's the quad damage here. It's kind of, it really is hidden away in a little side area. Even when you've kind of found it and then you go and find the rocket jump room and come back to get the quad, it's really hard to find that room again. I walked around in circles in this area for a long time. It really is a maze. It's quite unfortunate. It feels like it's about twice the size that it needs to be, unfortunately. Never mind that, because we're going to go on a nail gun rampage. There's something about the quadded nail gun, man. So here's the room, and as you can see, Diggs has added the arrows on the floor here, which gets the player to look up, but even then, you barely notice the hole in the ceiling. It really doesn't stand out at all. You can see there is a little alcove under the water as well, which you can go and have a look at with this biosuit. And this gives us a taste that there is in fact a rune on the opposite side. Yeah, the arrows get you to look up, but I just feel like the whole design of the room, all the visual interest is at eye level, which is the main problem here. You never really notice it. So I'm going to skip past literally about 12 minutes of footage of me running around like an idiot. We're going to go straight back to the quad run to actually do the jump. And because this level is so confusing, I take the long way back to the rocket jump room. Of course. I barely have time to get there actually. It's nice that you can go both ways, but you just have to be very, very quick. And luckily there is a bit of assistance here from the map itself, so all you have to do is rocket jump upwards and you'll be caught by a push trigger, which lifts you into this room automatically. So it's not actually a difficult jump to make, you just need to kind of put two and two together to actually work out that you do have to make it. I think it's the biggest leap in the entire map, and the one which, if it had been designed slightly better, would have been a lot easier. You wouldn't have to use such heavy-handed techniques. Techniques. To get the player to notice it. Like for instance the text. I really dislike that, it's very heavy-handed. And now we get to the final boss. And this is really, really cool. And very, very frustrating in equal measure. So you'll notice that this map isn't a mod at all, and yet it contains a boss fight, which isn't a typical boss fight at all. So you've got these two coloured plinths that you have to hit. One of them raises the floor, another one compresses the ceiling, which forms a crushing trap. And you'll be fighting a Vor here, a Vor with a quad damage. And there's some interesting mechanics going around here as well, which makes the map really, really interesting. So every time you pick up an item in these kind of funny force fields, the Vor will teleport, usually directly behind you. The Vor actually glows with power as well, as you can see here. This is a really nice touch because it lets you see where the Vor is without having to expose yourself to its homing projectiles. So you can kind of gauge its position a lot easier. But yeah, the main problem with this fight, it's not the actual mechanics of killing the boss, because that's fairly self-explanatory. you kind of get that you have to crush it in a trap. Because shooting it with rockets just doesn't work. It regenerates itself super fast. The problem with the boss is that every time you pick up an item, it teleports her around. But it's such a stretch to actually work that out. I believe that the kind of teleporting kind of haze wasn't in the original version of the map, which made it even harder to work out. And it can make the boss such a chore to complete, because if you have no idea why she's teleporting, then it's much harder to actually control her movement and get her onto the platform. It can be really annoying. Don't do that, by the way. The trick with this boss is to actually get the Vorball to hit the plinth in front of you and then push it. That's the trick. So I'm going to skip a little bit of footage here because I've got about 5 or 6 unsuccessful attempts here. But it turns out even if one Vorball hits you, you can survive another rocket jump in order to finish the boss like so. Yeah, it's a really interesting boss fight. I really like the layout of the arena, and I actually really like the fight itself. It's just the mechanics, again, just aren't explained well enough to the player. Again, I think if the map was a full-on mod with accompanying code, you could do some really cool stuff involving things like perhaps a bunch of lightning flies everywhere when you pick up an item and she teleports and it's like really obvious that the two are connected. That's probably how I'd do it. But again, that would require, you know, code support. And considering that this map is just absolutely standalone, it's pretty amazing that Diggs has created this without any additional code at all. Just really clever use of teleport brushes, monster pushes, things like that. It's really cool. Yeah, it's just the visuals just need to be communicated better to the player. So yeah, that's Diggs 07, RJ Zone. Really interesting map. Once I understood all the mechanics, I had a lot of fun with this map. It's super fun. But yeah, if you kind of miss a couple of things, then it can be really frustrating. It emphasizes the importance of visual language in games. It can make a super fun map super irritating if you get it wrong. Alright guys, I'm back! Way! I managed to get Quake to stay stable with my backup graphics card for now, so I can do Quake stuff. Half-Life is still out of the question because it doesn't run fast enough with all the settings on max, and I really don't want to make Half-Life videos on low settings. It will look awful. So just bear with me, hopefully we'll fix this crisis soon.